Alright guys, what's happening? Welcome back to No Pressure English. I hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. It's lovely and rainy here in Ireland. But anyway, let's look at this week's topic. There's a moment in language learning where everything changes. And in my experience, it might not be what you think. Let me show you what I mean. This happened to me years ago in Barcelona. I was staying in a hostel with a couple of friends. I didn't speak Spanish. Still don't really, unfortunately. But I went down to reception to grab a drink. There was a fridge there and I said to the guy, "Hey, is it okay if I grab something?" He just looked at me. So I asked again, "Can I grab something from the fridge?" Nothing. Then I slowed down my speech and asked, "Can I take a bottle of Coke?" And immediately he replied, "Yes, of course. No problem." Okay, I went back upstairs and I told my friend that, the guy didn't understand me very well. And she just laughed and said, "Well, yeah, you said grab." And that was it. That tiny moment stuck with me because I realized something I'd never thought about before. As a native speaker, I wasn't using difficult English on purpose, okay? But I also wasn't using clear English. And I had no idea. For me, grab is completely normal in that context. I'd use it every day, but in that situation, for a learner or for a non-native speaker, it's not obvious. It's not the obvious word choice. And that's the problem, that sometimes native speakers don't realize when they're making things harder to understand. Later, when I started learning other languages, especially when I was in Italy, I felt the other side of this. People would speak to me and I'd have no idea what they were saying. And not because they were trying to be difficult, but because they were just speaking normally. And that's when it clicked. If you're learning a language, you have to accept something. You won't understand everything. Not because you're bad at the language necessarily, although in my case that was the situation at the time, but because regular people don't simplify that much. They use what feels natural, their speed of speech, their vocabulary, their accent. And here's the key point. There's a moment when learners start to improve. And I see it all the time. At the beginning, when they don't understand something, they panic a little. You can see it. They're thinking, should I interrupt? Can I ask them to repeat that? What was that word? There's tension, just a little bit of tension. But then something shifts. They're in the conversation. They're present. They're not translating everything in their head. And when they don't understand something, they just say, "Sorry, can you repeat that? Can you go back a second? I didn't catch that. Sorry, I didn't really get that. Can you rephrase it?" No stress, no hesitation, just clarity. And that right there is progress. Okay, not perfect grammar, not understanding every single word, but staying in the conversation 100%, even when you don't understand everything. Because the truth is, you don't even do that in your own language. Sometimes people mumble. They don't speak clearly. Sometimes they speak too fast. Sometimes they explain things badly. And on those occasions, what do we say? We usually say, "Hey, sorry, what was that? Sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry, I didn't catch that. Sorry, I didn't get that at all. Can you rephrase that?" So why should it be different in English? It shouldn't. So if there's one thing to take from this episode, it's this. Confidence isn't understanding everything. It's feeling okay when you don't. That's the shift. That's the level up. So this week, try something simple. When you don't understand something, try not to freeze. Try not to panic. Just ask, "Sorry, can you repeat that? That last part, I didn't get it." Stay in the conversation. Now, let me give you 2 simple ways to improve this. First, stop translating everything. Okay, instead of hearing a word and searching for it in your language, connect it directly to an image, a feeling, or a situation. If you understand most of this episode, you're already well capable of doing this. At the beginning of the language learning journey, translating helps. But at a higher level, it slows you down. Second, self-talk. Okay, take 5 minutes a day and speak to yourself in English, out loud. Start with simple questions. At the end of the day, you could ask yourself, what did I do today? And if it's the beginning of the day, ask yourself, what do I need to do today? And go through your to-do list systematically. That's it. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be embedded in your routine. It's your life, your vocabulary, your space. And if you get blocked, you can go and find the word you need. And over time, that connection between your brain and your words will get faster and stronger. And when you're having these conversations with yourself, don't forget to interrupt yourself, politely, and ask yourself to repeat a couple of things, It's free practice. Good times. All right, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast. It really helps more people find it. Take care. Have a great week. And I'll see you next week. Ciao. Ciao.